Okay, racking up this Saturday's fixtures with my team Leicester playing Leinster. And it's funny because my channel started roughly a year ago this time of year. I mean, I literally talked about this fixture in the quarterfinals last year, and I think a lot of the things that I'm going to say are pretty similar to the things of last year. First of all, Leinster were obviously the much more talented team. Their talent was on show today. Jamison, Gibson-Park, well-deserved man of the match. I mean, did his best impersonation of Dupont, of Antoine Dupont that he's done. I think what I've seen at club level, he is sensational. I'm not saying this is unexpected from him. It was just a very, very good performance. Henshaw, great. A lot of the pack, great. Josh van der Flier, maybe a slightly quieter game, but Joe McCarthy was sensational. The Irish front row, especially I think the substitute front row that came on, were really, really good. And Leicester showed a huge amount of heart, and I think they really played their socks off. But the reality is in terms of the quality of the team and the players within it, I think it was always going to be an uphill battle, especially as you've got injuries such as George Martin, Tom Raffel, Ollie Chesham, Ben Youngs. These are all international, well-known named players. So, going into it, I think Leinster were 20-point favourites, and rightly so, because, one, it's in Ireland, it's in the Aviva, and yeah, so I think Leicester can be pretty proud of what they did today. I think one of the biggest things really was that it was mistakes. Leicester made so many mistakes, and they needed to put the pressure on Leinster, and they needed to basically play the perfect game if they were going to have any chance of winning this, which they didn't. And Leinster really capitalised on the mistakes that they made. The mistakes I'm talking about is looping passes that got intercepted, such as Henshaw's, knocking on and key moments when you're about to score points. Other mistakes such as, you got momentum and doing box kicks. It wasn't great. Now, saying all that, that's all the positive stuff. Now it's time to get into some of the negative stuff. As I know how social media and YouTube works, you goblins love your negative stuff. So, I know what you Irish and Leinster fans are generally like, so there's going to be this disclaimer, and I'm going to be putting it in every single time I feel like something is a bit negative, and it's just a reminder that Leinster were a better team. So, I'm going to give it a play for you now, just to get yourself ready. Disclaimer. What I'm about to say might hurt you, it might upset you, but what you must keep in mind is that two things can be true at once. One, that if this is true, and it is, Leinster was still the better team, and it does not mean Leicester were going to win the game. Okay, with that, so, the refereeing, awful. I think it was terrible. I think the breakdown was not refereed well. The scrum was not refereed well. I think Leinster did a very good job of being in the way quite a lot of the time, slowing down ball. There was a lot of cynical challenges. Only once really was it yellow carded. I think, I don't know. There's something about the refereeing, the whole of today, for all of the games. I think especially for the Stormers La Rochelle game as well. It was just awful. Like, no consistency, breakdown not policed at all, people off their feet constantly. It really, I think it played into Leinster's hands a little bit in that regard. And again, Leinster have got such a quality side that I think once the substitutes started to become a part of this, it really made the big difference, right? A lot of the substitutes that came on for Leicester, they're people that I don't even know that well, and I consider myself a pretty big fan. The only real major ones in there really were like Mike Brown, some of the backs that came on, some of the back rows that came on I knew of, but you look at Leinster's pack that can come off the bench. You got Jack Conan, the inaugural super sub. Obviously, Keenan Healy came on. They just got all round the park, just great people that they can bring on, and I think that's really what really closed out the game for them. But at the end of the day, as I said, Leinster deserved to win this game, as the disclaimer says. So, at the end of the day, I don't think there's a whole lot that you can complain about as a Leicester fan. It's been a bit topsy-turvy this first year with Dan McKellar. I think there's been some real positives, some great progress shown. But I think they really need to make some signings. They need to sign in some new people. I would love to see probably like a couple of second rows maybe. I don't even think it's the first team. As I said, there were a lot of... Disclaimer. What I'm about to say might hurt you. It might upset you. But what you must keep in mind is that two things can be true at once. One, that if this is true, and it is, Leinster was still the better team, and it does not mean Leicester were going to win the game. A lot of injuries today for Leicester that kept them from playing their full strength side. But I think it's maybe just like some developmental prospects. Ollie Cracknell had a much better game today. But in terms of the younger guys, I don't really know who we've got coming in that I feel really comfortable about in terms of our future. A lot of guys that are aging out of their position. Jasper Wiese's leaving. I know we've signed that new South African 18-year-old that's meant to be like the new Jasper Wiese or whatever, but I haven't seen him play, and he's literally 18. So, disclaimer: what I'm about to say might hurt you, it might upset you, but what you must keep in mind is that two things can be true at once. One, that if this is true, and it is, Leinster was still the better team, and it does not mean Leicester were going to win the game. I don't think Leinster are going to win the tournament. I'm still not really sure what Byrne does at fly half. Kind of just kicked the goalposts. That was pretty much it. I feel like Byrne has a bit of an armchair ride in that back line. Doesn't really have to do too much. It's not like when Johnny Sexton was there and he kind of elevated the team. I made an analogy, and people have picked up in the comments that this is quite a good analogy, that playing for Leinster or playing for Ireland, you're basically, as a fly half, you give him the keys to the Ferrari. And I feel like when Ross Bird's in there, it's kind of like putting Lance Stroll in the car. So, I don't know. I feel like fly half's a bit of a question for them. And until they kind of figure that out, I don't think they're going to be winning this tournament. Obviously, they've got La Rochelle next week. La Rochelle did not look their best this week, and I know it's been their bugaboo. So, I do think that Leinster, if they're going to beat La Rochelle, I think next week's going to be the week they do it. Obviously, there's a lot of things that counter what they do very well. La Rochelle's defence is way more stout than Leicester's is and would be today, even though Leicester's defence was good. And it will kind of nullify a lot of what Leinster like to do off of quick phase, going through the same channels and then utilising outside space. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the real game for Leinster is going to be next week, whether they can kind of get over their bugaboos in terms of La Rochelle. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. If they beat La Rochelle and they beat them handily, I think I'll probably take them pretty seriously in this tournament. But, I don't know. I feel like there's teams out there that I like the look of a lot more. Bordeaux today looked like super mega powers. Harlequins, Marcus Smith looks like the best fly half in the competition at the moment for me. The Bulls look very, 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 very strong. And obviously we've got Toulouse playing tomorrow. So, disclaimer, what I'm about to say might hurt you, it might upset you. But what you must keep in mind is that two things can be true at once. One, that if this is true, and it is, Leinster was still the better team, and it does not mean Leicester were going to win the game. There's just something that's just, I don't know, maybe it's the choke factor about Leinster, the fact that they look great 9 out of 10 games, and there's that one game where they just kind of collapse right when they don't need to, like the semi-final. So we'll see. I mean, they definitely probably have one of the most talented teams in the competition. There's no kind of tangible reason when you look at them why they shouldn't win it. But then that was said about them last year, and they ended up kind of fluffing the final. I mean, I think it was fair to say that they kind of choked quite heavily in the final. So we'll see what they do. I think it's interesting. They definitely play a very exciting brand of rugby. What they do for the sport is really good. They draw a lot of attention and a lot of eyes to it. But, I mean, they won today, and, you know, they were meant to win today. So, yeah, I'm kind of just rambling and going in circles in here. But a very impressive performance by Leinster regardless. So, yeah, I mean, for Leicester now, focus on the Premiership. Try and make it into that top four for what has probably been the most competitive Premiership I've ever seen. Best competition at the moment for me, really, in terms of domestic leagues. Haven't watched too much Top 14 or Super Rugby so far, but it definitely looks like it's the most competitive league. And yeah, we'll see what Leicester can do. They've got a very uphill battle, but I guess for them, having the week off now, focusing on the Premiership might be good for them. Get some players back and really make a last push to try and get into that top four and maybe win the Premiership. So, yeah, a good game, to be honest with you, other than obviously some of the refereeing, which was dog shit, to be honest. But yeah, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed it wherever you're watching it. See you in the next one.